thugs now. What, I don't know if you were there at Stanley's house when Soros was there recently.
No, I wasn't.
And I asked him this question because he has this book, again, talking about fascism, and he lived under fascism in Hungary. And I asked him, I said, where are your buddies on Wall Street? Where are the people worried about the world their grandchildren will inherit? What happened to that notion of responsibility? And he said, it was greed. And he said, but greed is always there, but they're still worried about the outcome. And he said, the big problem is they are innocents. They simply do not believe it will happen.
In the late 30s, early 40s, I forget the exact year, my generation, I went in the Army when I was 17. I had read by then a book called It Can't Happen Here by Sinclair Lewis, which was a very chilling account of just ordinary middle America, which goes fascist, and how it'll come about. Wouldn't say he was a great prophet, but we all knew it could happen here. We watched Hitler. It was just fascinating. Every other day, if you read the papers regularly, a new country had fallen. He was suddenly up there. He was in Finland or wherever it was. He ended up. He's all over the place. He's got Poland. He's going to get Czechoslovakia. He can't get France. He got France. We were quite used to there's a wonderful song from the Revolution, "The whole world upside down" was the lyric of it. Well, we knew about the whole world upside down from having watched the newsreels of Adolf Hitler. What could happen there could certainly happen here. We had enough homegrown Nazis anyway, who were in favor of his tactics, if nothing else. Many of them high in the army. And I used to listen to some generals, because I had a stepfather who was an Air Force general, not a Nazi. But I could remember him, he was a very right-wing general. And he and the other generals would sit around, and they were just sort of chuckling about how we were fighting the wrong enemy. We should be fighting Stalin, not Hitler. And then somebody always piped up, yeah, well, let's go down to the White House and send him home. And of course, the American Legion had tried to do that with President Roosevelt when he first came into office. They tried to organize with General Smedley Butler, formerly of the Marine Corps, who turned out to be too much of a patriot, but they offered money. Would he overthrow FDR in his first term? So it was in our air. And fascism was in the air, obviously. It was between Mussolini, Hitler, and Stalin's repressiveness. And no one I know ever thought we would be exempt from it. As time passed, I began to watch things we were doing which were totally imperial, totally mindless. And I thought, we're taking some wrong turnings here. So you do your best to warn about it, and everybody does their best to pay no attention. And then suddenly you are faced with the fact that we have lost habeas corpus. So we are 900 years of Anglo-American law. It's been swept aside by a mere whim. And this Attorney General Gonzalez, every time I look at him, I see Truman Capote. Well, I just don't know about it. It's just, the Constitution's really quaint. He hammers away in that little nasal voice of his. And I thought, my heavens, how could you found that? I think of our ruling junta. Why not get a real lawyer, or a better lawyer, or somebody at least conversant with the Constitution? But I think the loss of habeas corpus, Abraham Lincoln did all the non-history these people come up with. They don't know why Abraham Lincoln did it. They don't know if he did do it. It's a talking point. Lincoln did it. FDR did it. This one did it. Oh, and George Washington. Oh, yes, George Washington imprisoned everybody, yeah. All you have to do is give them a suggestion, and it will cascade lies.
And what is the truth on that?
FDR, on habeas corpus, unilaterally suspended it when he arrested the Japanese Americans, on the grounds that they would be for their fellow tribalists from Asia after Pearl Harbor. And they're all mostly on the West Coast, so he put them in concentration camps. I have a friend, Louis iconoclast, a very good novelist, and great lawyer. And I said, well, when did you first, and very conservative, I said, when did you first become fearful for our democracy? Oh, he said, I was just out of law school when Roosevelt built the concentration camps and locked up the Japanese. He can do that without even an act of Congress. Congress will do many stupid things for a president, but they hadn't thought to do that, as far as I remember how it went. But that was presidential prerogative. Well, that set a very bad precedent.
But what about their argument that Lincoln did it, George Washington? I mean, they do use this argument all the time.
Well, let's begin at the beginning. There is no war, because everybody is either collusive or just damn dumb. They don't know any different. I'm talking about people on television, people in the media. I'm a wartime president, I'm a wartime president. To which, if you were in charge of the program or asking them questions, no, you're not. You cannot be a wartime president without a war. This is impossible. For a war, you need a country. Well, I mean, Iraq and blah, blah, blah. There is no war over that country. There is a criminal invasion of aggression by the United States on presidential order alone. It is totally illegal. You could be impeached any day of the week for what you've done, committing American troops, firing on innocent people. Saddam Hussein never had the power to do us any harm at all and had no intention of doing it. Now we're going to hang him. Oh boy, you see, that was a real serious war. We got him, and we're going to hang him. We have turned into the worst barbarians on earth, and that is how we are regarded in other countries. And I no longer put up a defense of us. I always used to say, Americans are not bad, they're certainly not stupid, but they're ignorant. The educational system is terrible, and the media is bought. That should just about take care of everybody.
I don't want to take up too much of your time here, but we did talk a little bit about the criticism that you've endured. And at the end of this, chapter 51, it's a lot of chapters.
They're very short.
Yeah. You have this, you're discussing this fellow Altman who wrote about you and so forth, and I don't want to read the whole thing, but you talk about how he gets it wrong.
Also.
And he gets it wrong about, you mentioned Jews, and he has some quote where you mention a black writer and Jewish writer and so forth, which seems quite, and then he says you're not sympathetic to African-American writers, and then,
It's just so
I
stupid.
just want to throw the third one in, and you didn't do enough for AIDS, and then you have this great response of, what do you say, I'm not...
No, my virological skills are few.
But I mean, people have really expected you, it's sort of weird, you know, you get damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you come out with strong statements, then, you know, why is Gore Vidal again saying something? But on the other hand, people have criticized you for not championing every cause around, right? I mean, that's what I got in this.
I quote Altman because he's very sympathetic. Much of what he's written in this book about me is pretty intelligent. He's Australian, though, and he doesn't really know the American context to everything. And I got word to him, and I said, you know, I was just invited by the Congressional Black Caucus to address them. I'd just flown in from Italy. I said, do you think that would happen to this writer, that writer, the other writer?
But you, in fact, were a strong supporter of writers like Baldwin.
I certainly was. I tried for 2 years to get Go Tell It on the Mountain published, which was the original title. It was Cry Holy. I remember it was in 2 white cardboard boxes. And I gave it to Elliot McCrae, who owned E.P. Dutton. And he looked at it for a while and said, that's James Boyd? I said, yeah. He said, I can't publish it. I said, why not? It's a wonderful book. He said, I'm from Virginia. Now, this is, you know, this is not 1920. This is 1946 or 7.
Yeah, you actually made the point that they had to go to France to establish it.
To be established and properly praised.
But what change have you, I mean, there's two areas there. You got, Baldwin was a homosexual and a black man. And how much has the world changed for those two categories, or people in those two categories?
Not much.
Really?
No. It's more vocal nowadays, and there are people who wrap themselves in the pink triangle. People wrap themselves in Africa. But the feelings are still there. Note the campaign which we're now enduring. Mr. Foley for the Republicans is in great trouble. Is harming them, I gather, just by what he is, not his little notes to page boards or whatever they are in the Senate.
So you really don't think it's changed that much? Or?
Very little. Very, very little. That you have militant movements sometimes set in motion by one minority or another minority. Doesn't mean it's changed people's views. They're fed them from birth. They don't change. I was just down in Texas, speaking in Austin, which is the liberal capital of the state. And just talking to liberal-minded Texans about their problems. The same old problems.
Really? So you don't even think there's more tolerance? I mean, here we are in Hollywood and so forth. I mean, out of the closet, all of the stuff that we've been hearing, gay marriages. In the case of black people, they're now called black instead of Negro. There's
changing a word does not alter a situation.
Let me ask you, you used the word conspiracy before, and one interesting part of the book is your view of the Kennedy assassination. And my hat's off to you on this, I mean, because it's one that, it's like Israel, the third rail, you don't want to touch it.
Yeah.
You make a really persuasive case.
Well, I recommend you read the book that I'm quoting from,
Yeah.
which took 14 years. These two guys wrote it, and they got a lot of interviews with people like Cyrus Vance, I think. A lot of other Freedom of Information Act. The CIA was coughing up stuff. It's the most thorough account we'll ever have of it.
But it's interesting because I guess your stepfather was
Jackie's stepfather, too.
yeah, and you knew Kennedy,
Yeah.
and I guess you knew Bobby somewhat. No?
Yes, I know.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have these different views. We have this mythical view of, even my students at USC, well, that must have been a good time, But as you point out in the book, the fact is they traffic with gangsters. And you say in the book, they probably got killed as a result of that. The same very people that they were sending to kill Castro.
Catastrophic irony, I call it.
What do you make of all that? Was it that we let the Shanty Irish get in our politics? Was this a disorderly family?
Well, it's, if there was a villain at all, it would be old Joe Kennedy, who was quite an operator and often dealt with the forces of darkness. And right toward the end of his life, Frank Costello used to come over in Central Park South to have dinner. And I remember Ray Stark, the producer out here, it was an old Teamster, and who used to go over and gave great massages. So Kennedy and Costello would be, before they had dinner, they'd get massages from this old guy. And then they would just gossip, and the old guy kept his ears open. Ray Stark knew him, and Ray told me about this. And I checked again, and he says, indeed, there was a former Teamster who used to come by Central Park South. And Costello was assigned to Joe Kennedy when he married into the Fitzgerald family up in Boston. And the first thing the Fitzgeralds provided him with was a bank. Presumably that was a laundromat. And then the mob sent him a young Italian called Costello. They remained friends to the end. What went wrong was that Bobby, wanting to build up his image after he was known as a cop, ruthless cop, who had gone after Hoffa, not a nice man, of course, but gone after him. Then he did the big arrests up in Appalachia of a lot of mob leaders.
Very dramatic in the newspaper.
Oh, yeah.
Surrounding the retreat.
Well, he thought that was going to make him president next time around, after Jack.